Good morning. This is Dan McLeod. I want to welcome you to East West Associates webinar, and today we'll be talking about business process outsourcing capabilities in the Philippines and Poland primarily, although we'll cover on some general topics as well. Our agenda for today, we'll start with just an introduction of East West Associates. And then as far as questions and answers, we've received some questions previously to start the discussion, but if anybody on the call has questions that occur to them as we go through, you can send those through us using the GoToWebinar control panel. So regarding East West Associates, a little background on us. We advise manufacturing companies primarily in establishing and improving their international manufacturing operations and global supply chains. So we have four suites of services. First, associated with global manufacturing, and this could include assessing supply chain footprints, site selections, facility closures or relocation, and project management and plant construction would be some examples of that. Second, we help our clients with operational and commercial performance, and this could be reviewing the effectiveness of their operations and particularly their organizations. We also get involved with the M&A due diligence projects where we assess operational performance, staffing and organization, and very often we get involved in projects where it's a short-term corporate turnaround or restructuring, where we provide guidance and leadership in the areas that we operate. Supply chain certainly is a key part of our capabilities, where we look at supplier base, identifying alternative suppliers, perhaps in low-cost countries, supplier investigations, due diligence on new suppliers to ensure that not only can they meet your need from a technical standpoint, but any concerns over their performance, financial or otherwise. And then once we've identified and assisted clients in moving to a new supplier or initiating a supply arrangement, we can assist with the transition through quality engineering and supply chain planning. And then finally, human resources and risk management. We often provide our clients integrity awareness training on an annual basis to ensure that the workforce understands their expectations around business practices. Interim general management, very often companies find themselves for a variety of reasons in need of short-term leadership, and where we can provide experienced senior managers, could be general management, it could be senior CFOs, senior HR people, for example, on a short-term basis to bridge the gap while they recruit on their own. Executive searching, we also do work in Asia, Latin America, and Europe for executives to meet specific needs. And then we also can arrange for compensation and benefits assessments to determine whether our clients are providing appropriate compensation. And again, where we operate, based in the United States, but we have folks on the ground in Mexico, Central Europe, China, and Southeast Asia. And here are some of the companies that we've worked with over the years. We've been in business for 20 years now, since 2005, starting with clients that were more heavily focused on China, but we've moved and include, again, operations in Southeast Asia, Mexico, Central Europe. Okay, so next webinar series, you're on this webinar, obviously. but we've been doing a few this month. On the 30th, we did one on third-party contract manufacturers, also on setting up new offices in Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines. And now we're talking about business process outsourcing. And then tomorrow we'll be discussing global manufacturing supply chain footprint. You can attend the last one, and for the other three, you can get downloads of that videos and from our website. Okay, now turning it over to our speakers. I want to start with Sean. Introduce yourself, and then Christine and Darius.
Hi, my name is Sean Thompson. I'm the Senior Director of Product Development at Henny Penny, who's a commercial food equipment manufacturer based out of Eaton, Ohio. I run all of product development, which includes mechanical engineering, electrical firmware engineering, R&D, and food science processes. My background is wide and varied in product development, everything from Department of Defense Electronics, Department of Energy, production facilities. I spent quite a bit of time in commercial electronics manufacturing, spent a number of years working with factories and our own facilities in the Southeast Asia, Manila, Taiwan sourcing, places like that, including both manufacturing and design activities. Prior to coming to my current role, I spent 10 years in fire alarm, fire suppression, and explosion protection systems with offices in Belgium and Wales. My background is I'm a degreed engineer, so I understand development extremely well, and I really enjoy figuring out how do we optimize global development activities for our organization.
Great, thanks, Sean. Christine?
Hi everyone, it's great to be here today. I'm Christine, and I've spent over 25 years in procurement and supply chain. One of the biggest milestones in my career was being part of the pioneer team that built Emerson's Global Materials Data Center, or GMDC, in Manila, Philippines. So this became the foundation of the Emerson's Shared Services and Supply Chain Hub in Asia. I was involved right from the setup phase, helping design how our procurement and supply chain support functions would operate. That included creating standardized processes, mapping global workflows, and working closely with our teams in the US and Europe to make sure we were all aligned and fully integrated. A major focus of my role was building a strong, high-performing team that could support multiple regions. I developed competency frameworks, worked on recruitment and onboarding plans, and I also put performance matrices in place to promote consistency, quality, and accountability. Training and capability building were also big priorities to ensure the team could grow and meet global expectations. We also introduced continuous improvement practices, governance structures, and knowledge sharing routines that help GMDC Manila evolve into a truly strategic supply chain hub. So over time, the team delivered measurable improvements in efficiency, supplier coordination, and global service delivery, which really solidified Manila's position as a key support center in Emerson's global network.
Okay. Thanks, Christine. Darius?
Hi everyone, my name is Darius, and I also have engineering background. I have over 20 years of experience in management consulting, including working with big four companies, mainly in procurement, operations, and transformation. For the last 5 years, I've been working with East-West Associates, supporting international clients with sourcing and supply chain developments across Central and Eastern Europe. Speaking about my experience from BPO and tech centers, earlier in my career, I participated in creation of engineering design center for GE Aerospace. Also co-developed a strategic business plan for an engineering center for Airbus Military, and helped design and implement the BPO model for a global medical instrument manufacturer together with EY. That would be it. Thank you.
Great. Darius, thanks. Yeah, we get a very experienced and senior group of speakers today. I'm Dan McLeod. I'll be moderating. I'm director with East West Associates. I've been working with East West for going on 8 years now. Prior to joining East West, my roles were primarily in operations and engineering management. I was in Asia for 21 years, working in China and Southeast Asia. And my projects now with East West Associates primarily work with manufacturing and supply chain footprints, supplier development, new factory site selection and construction, and also a bit of work with organizational development. So, having said that, let's move on to the discussion. A little bit of background on BPOs. This is a very broad topic, but just start with, when I look at business process outsourcing, it's hiring an external third-party provider for very specific business needs. Now, many companies go down this trail and looking for cost-saving advantages by adding staff in lower cost countries, and the tremendous advances in IT technology has really opened up opportunities to have a truly global operations. A second, beyond cost savings, it frees up management attention to focus on core activities. Whether or not you're outsourcing manufacturing or engineering or back office activities, in many cases those functions are not really key to the enterprise's strategy. So it allows a focus on core or strategic activities. Another advantage is folks are looking for a scalable support. They're looking at working with a BPO provider that could add staff quickly or reduce staff as required by business conditions. Very often, many of these arrangements are project based, and that have a specific timeline structure, and so a BPO structure makes it easier to scale those activities. And then, or access to skills, allowing going into a region that is rich in the kind of talent you're looking for is a major driver for companies that are looking to explore business process outsourcing. And again, the models could be sort of traditional, when you think of BPOs, traditional sort of back office functions and customer service. Global capability centers it could be through a third-party BPO provider, or could be through an in-house operation in a lower cost country, for example. These could include engineering, supply chain management, sourcing, HR services. And then increasingly, we're seeing a vertical here known as knowledge process outsourcing. And again, it's higher level activities around market research and data management and analytics. So those are sort of three major groups of outsourcing models that we might come across. And again, sort of summarizing those functions, these are sort of, in many cases, these are somewhat traditional models where we look at customer experience and accounting, finance, and typical back office administrative support. But again, also moving to higher level knowledge base staff, where we look at technology consulting, data, and data management. And carrying on, digital marketing is now taking off. Business analysis, product management, some areas that you may not think of as a potential for outsourcing your activities or BPO activity, but starting to see more and more of that now. Okay, where do you go? Sounds like a good idea, something I'd like to explore, but it's a big world and not sure where I should be looking. And it's a bit, you don't want to be faced with boiling the ocean, and ideally you want to limit your search to increase your chance of success. India certainly is a destination that most people are familiar with, and a well-deserved reputation for providing excellent service and excellent support to companies, whether or not it's to outsource that activity to a third party or set up your own center of excellence, your global center. But oftentimes it's a big geography. It's a big part of the economy, and many companies, smaller to medium-sized companies that don't have much experience in BPO, are somewhat intimidated by that market, and so look at areas that are perhaps less known but are more targeted and more specific. We're going to talk about the Philippines in more detail and Poland today. The Philippines is certainly is an electronics manufacturing hub, and it's an area where engineering services are available and key, in addition to the sort of traditional back office support that the Philippines has invested in that part of their economy for a number of years. We'll also talk more about Poland, and Poland in many cases doesn't spring to mind, but it's historically had very strong technical resources and highlighted some of the engineering centers that are now operating in Poland by leading international companies, leading multinational companies. It's a very impressive group of companies there. And we'll Darius, who's on the call today, has got experience in some of those, and we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that as we go on through the discussion. And again, when we talk about Poland, Philippines, and India being the big one, there are a number of ranges of cost and capabilities, collaboration models. It's wide open, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through case studies and question and answer. And then, of course, within a country, it's important to look within, and what we see, whether or not it's the Philippines or India or in Central Europe, there are certain clusters of activity, and being able to navigate through those with the criteria that are most important to your company are key to success. Again, in case of some comparison of regions within India, for example, as their strength and description of their general work culture. Again, looking at global centers of capability, we're seeing much more interest these days in digital capabilities and moving on, in the AI area particularly and data analytics is an area that's growing rapidly in terms of outsourcing of capabilities or setting up global centers of excellence. Okay, so a little bit of background on BPO, share some information. We've got one case study, and then I'm going to stop doing most of the talking after we get through the case study. Just to give you an example of some work that we've done recently that we're pretty excited about. In this case, the client was a Midwestern manufacturing company, and over the last 5 to 10 years, the control systems and the expectations around Internet of Things, data monitoring, data analysis have skyrocketed, and the clients struggled to find capable in-house engineering talent. That it didn't help that they were in a rather rural area in the center of the country, and most of their targeted staff would be living on the coast. So what the client looked at their engineering resources in the U.S. and determined that for the type of projects they worked on, these engineers would have to be very deeply embedded within the domestic engineering. So they'd be working daily with their counterparts. So that was the consideration. We also wanted to look at scalability and potential for growth, as if this could be very much looked at as a pilot opportunity. And if successful, we would want to add additional engineering and potentially back office support. And so East West was requested to determine the available models. That would be, should we go to a third party, outsource this activity, or should we set up an office and maintain it within house? Look at timetables, advantages, disadvantages for different lower cost regions. In this case, we limited the search to India and the Philippines. Both were very capable markets for finding the kind of engineers and engineering resources that they're looking for. We understood the cost and the risks. We looked at establishing an entity versus operating through a third-party BPO partner. Looked at labor, availability, skills, and cost of talent, and went through in each of the regions, developed a list of suitable partners, interviewed them, went through a substantial RFQ process, and then took it through selection, staff, hiring, and startup. Decision was made. The recommendations that were carried out was to work through a BPO, work through a third party, however, with the option to transition to an owned entity at a future date. The reasons for that was it was much faster and lower cost to start up. And this really, again, allows you to focus on the core activity at the office, and it was developing the staff, and you're not having to deal with the complexity of the day-to-day managing HR issues, compliance issues, and the like. And again, ease of exiting. You've got a defined contract without a legal entity to unwind, and employee contracts and leases are with a third party, and it's we've got pretty well identified contractual terms for separation. We recommended to locate in Metro Manila. This seemed to be the best balance of access to talent, access to pipeline of schools, established engineering resources in the area, and again, and then some of the key considerations for a BPO partner in the region would be the English language proficiency, certainly, close cultural ties to the U.S., and BPO operations are such a large part of the economy in the Philippines that it's understood that off-shift coverage, particularly second shift, is a pretty good fit for most firms in the U.S. It's common in the industry, and so it would be relatively easier to recruit the kind of people you're looking for. So again, we did an initial comparison of potential BPO partners. Again, we wanted somebody that would be small enough to pay attention and pay close attention to their customer service and support for the new organization. And we looked at a variety of companies and operating models. And then once we got it down a short list, fairly comprehensive scoring, until we came up and we had 3 very strong candidates that any of them could have worked out. So we were quite happy with the range of capabilities and the types of companies we chose to work with. And then once with that, we did due diligence, a strong due diligence process to understand the background of these companies in particular, and selected one partner, and had a very compressed schedule for recruiting and onboarding, and this was done in 4 months. We found a good selection of engineers through our recruiting processes, both EWA's resources and the BPO recruiting process. And significant savings were realized, 3 for 1. So I get 3 engineers for 1 engineer in the US. And that increased the organizational capability, not quite overnight, but very, very quickly. And so that was been a big plus. Okay. So that's case study. And now we'll get some of the panelists involved in some questions that we had come in earlier before the webinar. And if there's anything comes through, anything that you'd like to send on, please feel free to do so through the chat capabilities. All right, just start us off. Christine, can you talk a little bit about the typical functions to outsource and what you see companies doing now and your experience the last several years of looking at the industry?
Sure, Dan. So when we talk about what companies usually outsource, it really comes down to saving time, cutting costs, and accessing specialized skills, which actually Dan already touched earlier. The most common areas include customer service, things like email and chat support, CRM management, invoicing and billing. Businesses also outsource a lot of data and admin work such as data management, reporting, invoice processing, and quality control. On the sales side, tasks like appointment setting, outbound calling, and lead management are often handled by external teams. More specialized functions like medical coding, transcription, AI integration, IT support, troubleshooting, and financial processing are also widely outsourced because they require trained experts. Also, creative work is another big category, including graphic design, web design, animation, and digital marketing, such as social media, search engine optimization, PPC, and email campaigns. Today, we're also seeing more companies outsourcing engineering tasks like what we have in our case study today, like CAD drafting, prototyping support, and quality engineering, as well as supply chain functions. Of course, supply chain functions because that's what we did in Emerson. That includes procurement support, vendor coordination, order processing, and logistics planning. So overall, organizations outsource everything from routine tasks to highly technical work so they can stay efficient and focus on their core capabilities that drives their business forward.
Sean, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of highlighting what Christine said. I mean, obviously with the case study, we're seeing a lot more outsourcing of technical capabilities, really focusing in on your core competencies and organization and figuring out which parts can you actually take out of house. What do you need to be the expert on? What do you need to partner on? And partnering can be a lot more than just finding a firm to partner with. Like the BPO is really an extension of an organization. So considering what are the things that you can do and can you parallel activities? I mean, one of the things that we're actually looking at right now is, as Christine mentioned with drafting, we're considering having mechanical design done in the US and then overnight we can have a team create drawings for manufacturing and things like that. So there's really, you need to look at your business as a holistic view and say, okay, what pieces can be done? What does technology enable? And how can we operate more efficiently?
So that's an interesting one, Sean. So you're taking advantage of the time change to essentially get close to 24-hour coverage and turn stuff around overnight.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And while we're not fully implemented yet, we're definitely starting to see some of those advantages.
Okay. Darius?
What I would add to that is, I mean, similarly to what Sean said and Christine, basically in case of Poland, I think that the heavy development is the key process to outsource. So if you have a product that is IP heavy, where you need to develop it to, let's say, in a smart way to make it 4.0 product with things like Internet of Things or AI implemented somehow in your product, then Poland is a good choice to go to.
Okay, great. Sean, can you take the next question about company values and what you see as the importance of integrating the employees?
Sure, absolutely. For us, the company I'm with, culture is everything to us. So it's an essential component. Obviously, when you have time zones and cultural differences factoring in, figuring out how to transfer the company values and the company culture is essential. There are several basic techniques, things like if you have signage that you put up in your offices that show your core values, make sure you put that up in the localized office, in the BPO office. Make sure that you have personal connections. We basically force everybody to make sure that if we're on a meeting, you have to share video. It makes it a lot more personal. We make sure we make frequent trips. Myself, being very integrated in with the BPO in the Philippines, I'll be over there on a quarterly basis minimum. Celebrate the small wins with them. Those are big things like, hey, great job. The attaboys, the things that take 5 minutes when you walk across to somebody's cubicle, things like that are much more difficult. Obviously with the BPO, shoot an email, shoot a Teams note, give them a quick call. It's funny, engineering types being very introverted, this is actually almost impossible to get them to do, but pick up the phone. It's a silly thing, but just that conversation. Some of the other things you can do is take pictures of the staff in the remote office, put them up in your main office so that people can associate a name to a face. Have multiple intentional conversations, almost on a monthly basis about what do the core values mean? Why are they important? Reiterate over and over and over again that they are part of the organization. Yes, they may not be directly on the books, but they're an essential piece of the organization, and just continue to drive that. The other thing you have to do is you have to be selective in hiring. I cannot stress that enough. Finding the right leader for your remote office that can embrace your core values, just like you would hire in a localized at your facility. Treat it the same way so that you can actually establish that relationship with that manager locally so he can drive those values in. We've been very successful. We've been fortunate enough that we found a manager that aligns to our core values very well. He's doing an excellent job of driving those core values into his team that is remote. We have regular, every one-on-one, we're talking about, okay, what are you doing to reinforce the core values? Be intentional. We did a grand opening celebration with the office, and we took everybody out, and we had a nice evening, nice meal, did some bowling, and did some karaoke. The other thing that really helps, and this is more to the leaders, be vulnerable. I can't sing to save my life. I openly admit that. I got up on the karaoke machine and embarrassed the hell out of myself. But you know what? That builds those relationships, and that builds that culture into the org. It's a silly thing, and sometimes people are just embarrassed, or they don't want the boss to look silly. Guess what? Looking silly is what builds those relationships.
That's great. That's great experiences. Gary,
I don't know if there is, I don't know if there is anything else to add, but speaking for Poland, yes, Polish engineers definitely prefer, personal contact over, emails or, just a formal contacts. Yeah, so personal contacts on a daily basis during the calls, it's very important, and also the beer in the evening, I would say too. So then, therefore, you can this way you can transfer the values from your mother company to the BPO. Otherwise, if you just come up with a written code of contact and ask people to sign it off, I mean, it wouldn't work basically. So it's better to share experience, to invite people to events, to discuss on personal level, and that would definitely work.
Great. Sean, can I throw it back to you for this sort of segues into setting up your own country versus working through a BPO partner. A lot of companies are weighing the pluses and minuses of that. So maybe talk a little bit about how you thought about that.
Yep. Yeah, this is the difficult one. I mean, when I look at my organization, we are very vertically integrated in a lot of ways, more so than most organizations I've ever worked with. So owning and being in full control of an entity is an essential part of who we are. So when we took a look at this, it was a difficult decision. What we ended up having to really take a hard look at is, okay, if we were to set up our own entity, We're going to have to spin up HR. Do we have the ability to be able to support that? We have to factor in the time zone difference. All those kind of management activities, training, compliance, regulatory, those are significant hurdles for an organization that's not localized to do. We have a large part of our workforce that is not BPO, that are Henny Penny employees, but we go through a different employer of record. And to expand that out significantly was going to put a substantial burden upon our localized services, you know, HR, payroll, things like that. You have to really take a hard look at that and decide what level of burden are you willing to take on, what level of risk are you willing to take on. Obviously, having a partner, we are saving substantial amount of money, because we probably would have had to add multiple people to staff here in the US or even locally that we would have to directly manage, which can be extraordinarily difficult on a 12, 13-hour time shift. Having had past experience in running offices that were remote or overseas or on a significant time shift, people will significantly underestimate that challenge. That challenge is massive. Now, you have to really decide what is your long-term play. As Dan mentioned with the case study, we are in a situation where we did start with a BPO. We may at some point in the future decide to make a wholly owned entity, but we've got to decide that at a timing that works for us. So those are some of the considerations you really got to think about.
Great, great. Christine, did you have anything further on that?
Yeah, I agree 100% that. Yeah, when it comes, it makes sense if you want a plug and play type of organization that is low cost and would run efficiently, and could integrate really quickly with your organization. Then it is really makes sense to set up the team with a BPO partner.
Okay, all right. Moving on, Darius, what sort of disadvantages or potential issues have you come across when working through an outsourcing arrangement?
I mean, in case of Poland, I would say the cost is growing. We have a cost inflation. Poland is no longer a cheap country. Salaries are rising, and basically you need to pay more to capture top talents, as they have basically the entire European market available. So that would be the first point. The second point, I would say, in Poland you have to struggle. I mean, it goes together with the competition. So basically, cities like Warsaw, Krakow, Wrocław, they are already crowded with companies and their BPOs. So basically, again, you have to chase. Sometimes you have to chase for engineers. But on the other hand, Poland is right now the living in Poland is similar to living in Germany or Italy. So if you need to relocate a Western engineer from Western countries, a talent to Poland, it wouldn't be a problem. Like in case of India, yes, if you have to send someone to India or Philippines, then it's another story. In case of Poland, it's a little bit easier. So that's advantage and disadvantage. And the last thing as a disadvantage, I would say the notice periods. I mean, Poland is we have a quite rigid labor law. I would say similar to other countries in Western Union or entire Europe right now. So basically, the notice period is 1 to 3 months. And basically, this means that you are not that flexible, like in the US, for instance, and you don't have at will employment. Yes, so those are, let's say, 3 disadvantages that I would mention. But I can also talk about the advantages if you like. Dan.
I think we'll get down to that. We'll get to that. Yes. Moving on, Christine. There's people think about BPO operations as large call centers or um, billing offices or customer service staffing. But is there something that's too small for a BPO? I mean, if you only have a few people, is that something you can do?
No, not at all. Also, when it comes to team size, there really isn't a number that's too small for the BPO partners. So based on our experience, many BPOs are actually very flexible. They can support teams as small as one person. So we've worked with providers that cater to small setups, usually in the 1 to 10 person range. So especially for startups or companies that would want to test the waters with outsourcing. So even if you're starting small, just for one person, most BPOs can still accommodate you and scale as your needs grow.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, if I may add to that, I would say similarly in Poland, when you work with engineers in Poland, I would say under 20 engineers, it's usually a situation where you're looking where you're looking for a third-party vendor. I think the critical mass to have own legal entity is 30 to 50 engineers, and over 50 engineers, it's a must. Yes, so basically, yes, you can work with a one engineer, 1 to 20 with an external vendor, and then you need to transition from vendor to captive.
Okay, good. Darius, why don't you take the next question as well? Some of the advantages to some of the countries that people frequently look at for outsourcing, such as India and the Philippines, and then you can talk about the advantages of Poland too.
So, okay. So speaking for Poland, I think the advantages is basically top tier talents. I mean, you definitely have good engineers here, and if you are in the situation where you, as I mentioned before, for instance, like in the case that we discussed, you need to free up some engineers that are bogged with the current product, and you can basically outsource this type of work to Poland, and then focus with your own engineers on new product development, for instance. That could be that scenario. Yes, so definitely talents. The other point is cultural alignment. Similarly to Philippines, I would say there is absolutely no difference, or the differences are very, very small and easy to overcome. So so it's a cultural fit, and stability, safety in terms of regulations, and I would say the advantage of Poland is also the time zone. So we have this few hours overlap. So basically, when you need the daily meetings, for instance, between engineers, so then it is possible. You can work on a daily basis. So for US engineers, it's morning. For engineers in Poland or Central Europe, it's afternoon. But still, they can share the screen and work for a few hours together. So those are the advantages for Poland. Shall I speak for India? Or
no, sure, go ahead, Derek.
I would say India is good if you need a big scale operations. That's how I feel it. So basically, if you are in a situation that you need 1,000 programmers who can code, or this kind of operations, then definitely India would be a better solution. But on the other hand, you will have to struggle with the bureaucracy and legal aspects of the business. So, and also there are cultural issues between the West and then Indian people. So so yes, this you have to consider. but both Indian and people from India and Philippines, they used to, I think, 24-hour model, because they have kind of 12 hours difference. So they used to work third shift. So I remember even in calls, when I participated in calls between or among US, Europe, and Far East, and basically it worked. Yes, so usually it was morning in the US, afternoon in Europe, and evening in the Far East, and it worked. For Philippines, I would say they are very good in all type of technical support center on 2 or 3 level. Very good English. I would say even better than in India, especially in Bangalore. I have a problem to understand the accent from Bangalore, actually, especially when there is a critical situation, the accent got worse. So that's at least my experience. So, but yes, so Philippines, good English, good communication. They are also straightforward, and also good engineering skills. If you are talking about AutoCAD or this kind of engineering activities. Yes, so also good coders there as well. So that's how I would describe it.
I guess one thing that is related to that, maybe Christine, you can take this. In Philippines in particular, I've had some experience with the economic development organizations. There are various, and there seems to be not just an understanding of, but an overt support for outsourcing services, and a tailored incentives to look at companies to start up those types of operations there. I mean, do you have a couple examples of that, or have you had any experience with that?
Yeah. So the government offers tax incentives to those BPO outsourcing facilities. It's because it's like you're exporting, right? So it is the same incentive as the manufacturing export companies. So they are enjoying the same benefits. Yeah, so there are tax incentives.
Okay, that's interesting that they look at as an export.
A human, yeah, good. Because the skills of the humans are being exported. Yes.
All right.
Human capital.
Yeah. Sean, it sounds like in your experience, you went through internally. You went through a lot of thought about whether or not outsourcing some of your services would be a fit for your company.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you're making a decision like this, obviously it's a massive shift. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we're very vertically integrated. I mean, we're a Midwestern company. We have very Midwestern values. It's keep it in house. Don't send it overseas. Overseas is a threat. They're going to steal our jobs. I mean, all those kind of arguments that you hear that, while there may not be truth to them, you have to deal with that within the organization. You have to make sure that the organization is really, do we have things that make sense, first of all, to send out or partner with an organization that may be in a different continent? Are your systems in place? Can you actually coordinate and communicate? We have significant challenges that I would say 5 years ago, there's no way I would have considered a BPO. Our systems weren't in place in order to be able to do code development, sharing of the source code, collaboration between the engineers, things like that. We just were not prepared culturally for that. So you may have to consider, do I need to lay a little bit of groundwork culturally to make sure we are very intentionally sending a message that our BPO is an extension of our capability, not a replacement of capability here. I like to tell all my staff members, I said, guys, I want you doing $500 an hour work, not $50 an hour work. If I can send that $50 an hour work overseas, you can provide a lot more value to the organization in a different way. Okay, my mechanical drafter, if I have you modeling instead of doing drawings, that's much more valuable to the organization. So culturally, are we ready for that transition and things like that? Be very selective about what you do and don't outsource, and understand the company perception of what that might mean. And it's it's terrible to say this, but take a very negative viewpoint of that when you're asking yourself that question, because there may be people that may view it the wrong way. You may never convert them fully, but you have to be able to explain, like, this is why we're doing it. This is the advantage to the organization. This is how it helps the overall system. Figuring out that fit, if you're a good fit for BPO, if you can answer some of those questions, like, okay, are we really ready for that next step? And then culturally, are we going to be able to do that? Are we ready to invest the time to make it successful is another thing. And what does it make sense? One of the challenges for us, obviously, finding talent was a significant problem for us. I had an open job requisition for over 2 years that I could not fill. That's the kind of things that we were dealing with, and we had the need to expand substantially. So that was one of the driving forces behind, okay, we've got to try something different. Your infrastructure is another key piece. Obviously, we make equipment that is pretty substantial. We can't just spin up a test lab overseas in a rapid fashion. It requires a lot. And we made the conscious choice that we'll do testing here. So, okay, make sure that everybody understands that. And are they ready for the coordination and the collaboration and things like that? And honestly, you kind of got to help teach people how to communicate.
Okay. Darius, let's move on IP protection. And I imagine a lot of companies struggle with this too. They worry about, even though you're collaborating closely with a third party, what should I do to protect myself? Have you had some thoughts on that, or experiences with this?
In Poland, it's well regulated, and I think it's not a problem at all. So basically, if you are working with the third partner vendor, then basically you sign documents, you agree on jurisdiction area, and then it goes. And if you have a problem, then you can somehow realize this points from your agreement and go to the court. Yes, so that's the first point. The second point is that people here are really aware of data protection and IP property. So first of all, we have, I would say, kind of a mindset that all this type of vendors, they have systems in place. They properly use cloud if necessary. They protect their laptops. All the disks are coded and encoded. So basically, I would say it wouldn't be a problem in Poland. As for other countries, I don't know. I think Philippines are also, I would say, working in that fashion, because they also work with a lot of IT companies. As for the India, there might be some issues. Yeah. But maybe someone else could explain that.
Okay, good, thanks. Christine, when people think about the costs of hiring through a BPO, what should they consider? What should they be aware of?
Okay, so hiring through BPO, the cost is usually broken into two main parts. First is the one-time fee, which typically covers recruitment, onboarding, and any office setup or construction needed to get the team ready. Then you have the monthly recurring fee, which includes the employee's full compensation package, the BPO's management fee and facilities, things like workspace, equipment, and utilities. So on top of that, there may be occasional add-on costs for team building activities, specialized trainings, or other events, but those are only charged as they happen. And if you're using a BOT, or the build, operate, transfer model, the BPO initially builds and manages the team for you. Over time, once the operation is running smoothly, ownership is transferred to your company. So this means that you may pay a slightly higher setup cost upfront, but it can reduce long-term management fees since the team becomes fully yours after the transfer. So overall, the total cost depends on the role, the team size, complexity of support, and whether you choose BOT or standard outsourcing.
Okay. Sean, when you looked at costs or comparative costs, was did you find any surprises, or was the pricing fairly transparent or straightforward, or anything that you want to share about costing?
Yeah,
with
no,
some
I
folks on the phone?
would say it was fairly straightforward. I mean, there were things that we probably hadn't considered, facility costs. Like IT was one that we struggled with a little bit, honestly, just figuring out. Obviously, doing more development level work, we did have some cost increases because the specifications for some of our laptop computers and things like that were a little bit above and beyond what the standard package was. But I won't say that it was a major surprise by any stretch of imagination. It just required some conversations. We talked a lot about infrastructure. You know, do they have dual path internet service? Because obviously, if it goes down, it makes it very difficult. We do a lot of cloud-based exchanges, things like that. Funny story. I mean, in the last several months, there's been several typhoons that have hit the Philippines. So we've had a lot of staff work remote, and we had to make sure and consider, okay, are their systems capable of doing remote work and things like that? Do we have plans for that? So those were some of the costs that probably came in that we didn't think about. Understanding maybe what do you want to offer as benefits to some of the staff, not just the base staff, but maybe your management staff, like for incentives and things like that. Honestly, those were things we hadn't considered. Cell phone plan, parking plans, things like that. They're not major costs, but they're just little things that they add up over time that you just kind of got to think about them. And we were not thinking along those lines. And East West definitely helped us make sure we addressed that with some of their support.
Yeah, I guess, Chris, understanding market pay and some things that are maybe not necessarily published anywhere, that talks about retention programs and retention activities is a key consideration in having that kind of guidance. I would imagine is when you look at what's this going to cost to run the company, correct?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I agree with that.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Don't underestimate the impact of customs also.
Yes, that's right, Sean. That's why yeah, it's better to really define it initially, so you won't have any other surprises. And the BPO would actually give you the advantages and disadvantages on how to do things, because the countries varies differently in terms of those things, like customs. So
Yes.
yeah.
And we're getting close on time, but we did get one question in earlier, and I think we've answered it, but just to clarify, this question came in about how small an organization would be suitable for a BPO partner. And I think we answered, there are some firms that actually specialize in just one or two people, but most of the sort of small to medium-sized BPOs that we've worked with or we've talked to, they don't really have a particular issue with just one or two or three people for a client. I think the more significant question for that is making sure you feel comfortable that they can recruit in the field that you want to recruit. Even if you're only going for one or two people, you want to make sure you've got a partner that can find those people for you. So, okay. All right. We didn't get quite through all the questions, but I think we covered certainly significant ones, and we've got an overview of the industry and some things to consider if outsourcing some of your operations are something in the back of your mind. So I want to thank the speakers, Christine, Darius, and Sean. And the recording of this will be available on our website. So if anybody wants to come back and refresh their memory on it, feel free to do so. Again, thanks everyone. Signing off.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yep.
should I? Log out.